Welcome to Beyond the Breakwater, where just beyond the crashing waves of fear, discomfort, and doubt lies the greatest potential for life transformation. We want to guide you into the open waters where the calculated risk you take becomes the turning point for you or your organization to thrive. So draw up your anchors and prepare for departure in this week's episode of Beyond the Breakwater. Welcome back to Beyond the Breakwater. I'm Lyndsay, joined with Ed here today. And if you have not listened to the first episode, I'd jump back and listen to that. But while you're here, Ed, give us a review. What did the folks miss?
Well, in the intro, Lindsay, we talked about a breakwater. I mean, that's the whole name of the podcast is Beyond the Breakwater. And a lot of people don't know what a breakwater is. I've been having fun with this and just asking people, what do you know about a breakwater? They're like, I don't even know what that is. So, well, we're from the Great Lakes. And it's a big body of water, and there's a breakwater. What do you think that is? And it's so fun because people just go, I bet it's breaking the waves. I bet it's breaking the water. Right. And it's really funny because most people can get that image in their mind. But if they haven't done so already, I would encourage them look at South Haven because I think that's really a good image that we're going to be using. And if you go to South Haven, Michigan, there are two what you might call piers, and they extend out on either side. And you can, if you're out in the middle of Lake Michigan, you would see the lighthouse and you could come into the breakwater and you go in between them. And then from there, it transition into land, where now you're in a river, but you're behind, you're inside the land. And the breakwater is the thing that transitions from the waves of the open sea and the calmness of the river. Because you don't want a lot of waves if your boat is inland in a harbor. And so you have the breakwater that transitions the two and stops the water so that you can go from the open seas into the calm waters. And that's what the podcast is really about, because it's amazing how many of us, and it doesn't matter if you're in business, if you're in a nonprofit, if you're in a church, the concept of the breakwater really matters. And what the breakwater is it's so easy for us to stay in that river, stay in the harbor. That's where it's so comfortable. But you got to go through the breakwater and you got to get into the open seas, because that's really where all the action is. That's where all the people are. That's where the new businesses, that's where new opportunities lie. And so you're either going to stay in your comfort zone or you're going to go out of your comfort. And that's the breakwater is the key. And so this whole podcast is about getting people, getting organizations, getting businesses, getting churches to get beyond the breakwater.
Yeah, I thank you for explaining that. I think when Ed and I were talking about what to name this podcast and he had shared breakwater, I was like, I don't know what that is. And so having that visual piece is so important and is such the filter for what we're talking about. And it applies to every single concept, individuals, businesses, churches. So what I really want to do is kind of dissect this whole picture of Beyond the Breakwater. We're going to talk about what it looks like to hang in that safety zone and what it looks to go beyond it, what that tangibly looks like for businesses. So I guess my question is, where are most people at?
That's a really good question. I think it depends on the person. I'm a person that likes to be beyond the breakwater. I mean, I love being beyond the breakwater. Most people don't. Most people really like to be in their comfort zone. One thing that I ask the staff, here's like a little litmus test of, are you beyond the breakwater or are you inland? Is I say, tell me what you've done for the first time in the last 6 months. And being on staff, that's a question that I throw out there a lot. Like, what have you done for the first time? Because I know if you say, well, I haven't done anything for the first time, then I know where you are. You're in the harbor. And the problem with the harbor is that the longer you're in the harbor, the more fearful it is to go beyond the breakwater. And so if you tell me, well, I did something for the first time that I've never done, I know that you've gone out of the breakwater. And the more that you can get a person out of the breakwater, it's a whole lot easier to say, well, let's try something new, because you're already out there. And if you're beyond the breakwater and in a personal area of your life, it's easy to go there in the capacity of your job, because you're used to, like, okay, I'm uncomfortable. This is hard. I haven't done this before. And you've heard me say, go jump out of an airplane. I don't care what you do. Just go do something for the first time that you can look back and say, I've never done that before.
And it is so hard, I think, to kind of hit pause and be like, what am I doing for the first time? Because as an individual, it's just how quickly time passes. And before you know it, 6 months, a year passes, and you're just like, huh, I've just been maintaining, I've just been surviving, I've just been doing the daily routines that I've had. And I think it's not until either if you're a self-initiator or if someone prompts you of, all right, come on, let's get out beyond the breakwater. What are you doing for the first time? That you're really able to assess and either say, okay, I've done these things, or, well, shucks, I haven't done a single thing. So, what does it look like? You said it's not until you get out beyond the breakwater that, like, what is beyond the breakwater? What's past that point?
I think Beyond the Breakwater is different. It could be the simplest of things. I mean, if we use the church model, what has the church done for somebody who's not part of the church? What has the church done in the community? Have they gotten involved in anything? Or are they're gathering on Sunday morning, they have Bible class, they have Sunday school, and everything they're doing is just for the people within the church. That's what we would call a harbor ministry. It's for them, it's by them, it's about the church. But when you say, but what are you doing for the community? That's a whole nother question. It could be as simple as there's a city council meeting, and I'm going to go because I want to know what's going on in the city council to see if there's anything that our church can do. Or if there's a group gathering in some capacity. Like the other day, I was part of a mental health coalition, and it was my first time there. And there were 25 groups, agencies, churches. Saginaw Valley State University was there. United Way was there. And I just went because I wanted to learn. So it's putting yourself out of the breakwater and maybe just going sitting in a meeting. And that's the first step. But when you walk in, I only knew one person. And so there's an uncomfortableness of, am I in the right place? Am I going to the right place? What should I say? What should I do? What are they going to talk about? Am I going to be uncomfortable? What do I know about mental health? What do I know about a provider of mental health? Nothing. So it was really good for me to just go get out of my comfort zone, out beyond the breakwater. So it could be simple, or it could be something much greater than that.
So what has it looked for you in past experiences to go beyond the breakwater and take it a step beyond that? Because I think sometimes even just from an individual perspective of like, all right, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to jump out of a plane. All right, I did that and now I'm done, check mark, going back into my box. But what has it looked like for you to go beyond the breakwater and stay beyond the breakwater?
I don't know if you stay beyond the breakwater because you always have to come in to rest. You have to, if you go back to boating, at some point you got to refuel. You have to get your supplies. You have to rest. You have to sleep. So at some point, you're going to be out there for a time, then you come back in. And then you refuel, and then you head back out again. Here's been, I think, the greatest thing for us. As we went beyond the breakwater and we started to ask questions, and I was asking whoever would listen and answer me the question, I would just say, can you tell me one need in the community that's unmet? And it was interesting because that's beyond the breakwater. And you just go and say, what's one of the needs that need to be met? And we found out one of them was housing. We're like, huh, interesting. I wonder if there's something we're supposed to do in housing. We found out it was transportation, food, childcare, jobs, healthcare, recovery. And now there's a lot of post-COVID issues that people are facing as well.
Mhm.
And when you go beyond and you start asking those questions, then maybe this is how I'm wired differently. I say, is there something that we should, what is God leading us to do? Ultimately, if that's where the needs are, then how is the church being called out of the harbor, through the breakwater, into the open seas to say, how do we help a person? How do we help somebody that has a transportation need? They can't get the car fixed, and our heartbeat is for single moms in particular, because it's sometimes so challenging for them, and that's where some of our ministries have started.
Hmm.
And so going beyond that breakwater, finding out the need, and just asking, are we supposed to do something about this need?
So it sounds like, you get beyond the breakwater, you assess what the need is, you go back into the harbor, refuel, rest, but you don't just go back out into the harbor or go back out into the breakwater beyond the breakwater and are aimlessly wandering. I'm sure that does happen at points, but hearing the narrative that you've spoken of, you hear a need for transportation and then you go back into the harbor and stay there, or you go back out and you've started something. So kind of share from your experience. I think it'd be good for the listeners to hear like what have these ministries been as you've heard the needs beyond the breakwater?
Yeah, it's a really good question. When you're out of the breakwater, for example, the Mental Health Coalition, I was the only one from our church out there. So when I came back into the harbor, I began to talk to people, and I began to talk to church leaders. And we're in healthcare now. I know we'll talk about that in a later podcast. But I came back and we began to talk about, is there anything that we can do about this? So when I come back into the harbor and find others, and a lot of people like to live in that harbor, so not everybody goes out. Even as a church, it's not the whole church that's out there. I mean, there's a lot of people that are hanging back going, we'll take care of the supplies. You guys go. We're too scared to go out there, but you go out there. We'll support you. We'll help you. We'll fund it. Come on back and tell us what you've been doing, and tell us how we can help. Tell us what we can pray for. Tell us what you need from us. So I find it fun that I get to go on the open seas a lot. And then I always try to bring people with me. I bring staff with me. I bring leaders with me. Then we come back, we come up with a plan. And then how can we as a church maybe start something in the open seas and run with it? Like a grocery store. What would that look like? And what do we need? And who do we need in order to do that?
So what does it take to get to that point? Because when I hear starting things like a grocery store in a church, I think, okay, surely you have to be a mega church, or some people might be thinking we're too small, we can't do that, or we're really understaffed, or our staff are they're already at their max capacity. We can't possibly extend ourselves in that way. That wouldn't be healthy. So what does that look like?
I think what I found, Lindsay, it just takes a person. It takes one. It doesn't take a whole. It doesn't take a whole church. We were in a mega church over the weekend, and we went and visited a mega church, and they don't have a lot of community ministries, and that there's nothing wrong with that. I just mean size doesn't matter. You could be the biggest church, you could be the biggest business, but that doesn't mean anything. You could take a small church, you could take a small group of people, you could take a one person who says, I found a need. Can we do something about it? And what are the resources that we're going to need? Who needs to be there? Who should be at the table? Who do I need to partner with? And I watch people single-handedly do extraordinary things because they're beyond the breakwater. And then they come in and they get other people really excited about going back out. So, I mean, when we talk about healthcare, here's two guys that don't know the first thing about healthcare, are bringing healthcare for a whole group of people that are overlooked into our community. So it doesn't take expertise. You can learn that. You can get those people. It just takes somebody willing to say, okay, I don't know the first thing about what I'm doing, but I'm going to go do it.
Have you been there?
Oh, I'm there a lot. I kind of live out there, Lindsay. I mean,
You do.
that's my playground. And I feel like every day I get to go out there.
So I think some listeners may be wondering, like, what are you doing? I'm hearing church, I'm hearing grocery store, I heard healthcare, transportation. Explain what kind of ministries you've been, how you've gone into the breakwater, beyond the breakwater, and what that looks like for your experience.
I think a brief overview. Here's the things that we're involved in right now. We have a coffee house that's a hospitality ministry, primarily focused on the high schoolers down the street. And that was based on there's no place for high schoolers to go. They can either go to a convenience store and sit in their car, or they can go to a restaurant, which they can't afford. But where do teenagers go? So, how do we create a safe place? So, we created it's a coffee house for them. We have a garage, an auto repair facility, and it's a 5,000 square foot building. We've worked on over 15,000 cars. We have a car dealership, and we've received in donated cars, hundreds of donated cars that we fix up and get into the hands of people that really need it. We are running a grocery store where we charge 5 cents over what we pay for it. And last year we did about $350,000 of sales, saving people hundreds of thousands of dollars in the grocery bills. We have an appliance company that's also a ministry because we take in donated appliances, fix them up, and then sell them to people with a warranty, to people that can't afford new and don't have the money to go to a laundromat because laundromats are really expensive. We have a house. It's the first of what we want to see is 20 houses. We opened up a healthcare clinic, primary. It's a family and urgent care, and that's our newest endeavor of trying to help people who have no insurance on how do we help care for them medically. And we just find needs and then we go do it. So we've been doing this for about 10 years, and every one of these things is just expanding incredibly. And we're not a big church. We're just kind of a smaller church that just has a heart for this, and we found creative ways to fund it, creative ways to manage them, and we're willing to try about anything.
That's amazing. I think us being in this for you've been in it for over 10 years, and I've just recently joined in the last year and a half, and I think we can look at that and just normalize it and be like, "Wow, this is amazing," but when you hear it all broken down, it's like, that didn't just happen overnight, and it wasn't just, all of these other entities and ministries popping up, um, without prayer, without other resources, without people joining in. So what does that look like to welcome other people onto your ship and going beyond the breakwater? Like, who is involved in this? Is it just the church? Is there more than that?
I think that's what's so incredible about this. Uh, it takes so many people and organizations to run all of these. Let's take the garage or the grocery store. We call it the Bridge Food Center. There's there've probably been 750 volunteers that have been a part of it, and we need drivers to go to Detroit to pick up food. We need people that cut meat. We need volunteers to run the store. Even the volunteers that run the store, we've reached into credit unions like Dow Credit Union and Dow Chemical and DuPont and Corteva and the hospital, and they come and volunteer their time. So it takes everybody. Now we're expanding into a new building, and we're raising hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that takes foundations, and it takes leaders in the community who want to know about it. We have a bonus section that the city competes with the county on who can bring in the most food for what we call the bonus section. And so I think the fun of this is that it takes a lot of people. And this is what I think is the most amazing part of it. Everybody's looking for meaning and purpose in their life. They really want that more than anything else. They're just striving. They want their needs met. Everybody wants to meet their own needs. And then they're looking for meaning and purpose. And so what we're doing is we're offering businesses. Would your employees like to make a difference for 3 hours? Come and volunteer. And then they come into the bridge, and it changes their life because they're doing meaningful ministry with dignity, even if they don't even know what ministry is. They're just serving people. And if they volunteer the time, then the people who are buying the food don't have to pay for their labor. So labor is so meaningful. Every week we save people about $15,000 in their food bills.
Wow.
So think about the value of a volunteer who comes in for a few hours and goes, "What's the value of my time?" We can tell you it's about $4,000 of time, of value that you gave your time for. This is how much you save people on their food bill.
Mm.
So all of a sudden they walk away going, "I don't know what just happened, but that was amazing." So now that we're getting ready to move into the new building, foundations are coming with bigger dollars. And so we're getting to interact with a lot of foundations and business leaders and agencies, because agencies are trying to help their people and they're looking for a way that they can help people with dignity, and they can just send them our way. Churches, we get to partner with churches who are looking for purpose. Like here would be a good thing. They want a church wants to get beyond the breakwater, doesn't know how to do it. So what we do is we go to churches and say, how would you like to come out beyond the breakwater for your church and volunteer and run the store? So now the church gets to go beyond the breakwater without all the risk. They just get to come and have fun and see what it means to make a difference in their community. And so we try to lower the risk for others so that they can step in and go, okay, this is incredible. I get to live, serve beyond the breakwater.
Mm. I think that's such a beautiful image, especially when you're thinking of the church and just seeing how the church can also partner with other ministries in the community. Um, I think being able to have a church that's in the community is really important. But what I'm wondering is, what does it look like for the nonprofit or for the business leader? Like, they might already be in the community as their nonprofit. So, what does it look like for this person to be challenged or this organization to be challenged beyond the breakwater?
Like a business leader you're referring
Mhm.
to?
Mhm.
I can take one of our credit unions in town, and the CEO came over and he volunteered at the grocery store. And he thought it was so incredible. He went back and made sure that all of the employees had the opportunity, if they wanted, to go serve there. So, as a business leader, he gave them time off. We do 3-hour shifts, and he gave his employees time off to go serve in the community and make a difference. And so, one person multiplied himself in extraordinary ways. And then what happened was, then the employees went back to the credit union and they were like, is there something more we could do? Yeah. And so, actually, to our surprise, we had a Midland Business Alliance group where all the businesses, hundreds of business owners get together. And Dow Credit Union said, we'd like to sponsor a table for the bridge so that you can tell more people about what you're doing. So here's one person in a business, in a community, who's helping all of his employees make a difference in a community
Mm.
at dollar cost, no dollar cost, except for when they sponsored the table for us, but no dollar cost to let your employees go fulfill their purpose. And then they come back and they're more like, this is a great place to work because we get to serve the community. And they love it. So I think he's helping us by serving. The employees are helping us by serving, but we're actually helping them fulfill their purpose. And now you have employees that are engaged and they love their jobs because they see the difference that their jobs are having in other people's lives in a very real, meaningful way.
Mm. There's so much permission beyond that breakwater, beyond that obstacle, and beyond your fears.
Right.
Permission for the church to engage, permission for its people to engage, permission for business owners, for their employees. It's like an access point almost for people to see what they're doing make real life impact. So beyond the breakwater, you mentioned in the first episode, that Jesus came to seek and save the lost.
Yes.
Um, What has that looked like with who you are serving and who you are seeing respond in the community to the grocery store, the garage, all of the ministries that have been started?
Lyndsay, thanks for opening up that door. When Jesus was here on earth, he gave an example one time of a shepherd who left the 99 to go find the one. Everything that we do is focused on one, not hundreds, not thousands, one. And everything that we're doing is trying to go after and find that one person. And here's how I see it. People have their own images. I believe that when a person doesn't know Jesus as their Lord and Savior, um, they're somewhere out in the open seas. And they might be lost. They might be overboard. They probably can't get themselves back to shore. Circumstances in their life have led them further and further away from, if we use God as the land, they've gotten further and further away from Him. They've gotten themselves lost, and they're not really sure how to get back. And when they're like, I don't know how to get back. I feel like the church is the rescue ship, and the church needs to be out constantly beyond their four walls. And they need to strategically go places where there might be somebody who's hurting, struggling, thinks God doesn't care about them anymore. And it's so easy when our needs are unmet that we think God doesn't care about us. So the church is in the perfect place representing God to be out in the high seas, and you find a person who maybe needs food, but they don't want a handout. They just want you to help them do it for themselves. And the church is in the best position to maybe go out to them and say, how can we serve you? How can we help you? Now, we know you want to do it. That's okay. So if you think about the rescue ship, we're not going to get you out of the water. We'll just put a ladder out if you want to come up on the ship. There's food, and you can buy it. And it gives them a chance to do it on their terms, the way that they want to do it. And we're just giving them the opportunity to do it for themselves. I mean, that's I think the key in everything that we do. We're not going to do anything for you. We see it as stepping stones. We're going to put a stepping stone in front of you, and you can take that stepping stone. So back to Jesus. I think He's called the church beyond the breakwater. It's the most frightening place for a church to be. But that's where people are who don't know Him. And it's not a wealth issue. Some of the wealthiest people are the most lost. And so people that their needs aren't met and they're struggling to survive, I think the church can step in the gap. And this is what I love. The church can stand in the middle between somebody who really wants to make a difference and somebody who really has a need. And so here be an example of that, like our car ministry. When somebody who has a car, who could trade it in or sell it, donates a car to us, and then we fix it up and we sell it to, say, a single mom for $400. And now it's safe. It's a good ride. Tires aren't bald. I mean, it's a great car. It's just been serviced, oil changed, ready to go. And somebody donated it to somebody who needs it, but she bought it. So now she has no car payments. She's not going to get a bad car. She got a really good car that's serviced well because we service it by licensed mechanics. And here we are standing in the middle of bringing these two together. And then one person walks away feeling like they really made a difference. And the other person walks away feeling like, wow, I got a great deal buying a car for $400 that actually runs, and is safe for my kids. Isn't that the perfect place for the church to stand to make it happen? That's what we do a lot of, is just find the need. And then once you find the need, who else is there? And here's the funny thing. Sometimes the people that are donating, they're just as lost as a person who's getting something. And we just stand in the middle, and they always ask, why are you doing this? That's simple. God loves us. He wants us to love other people. And we love the person who's donating by helping them with their purpose. And we help the person that really needs it by just not taking their dignity away from them.
Yeah, it's a perfect intersection to include and be a welcoming place for truly everybody, and to just be able to meet people that you would have never ever seen should you had just had your church doors open. But you can meet the mom coming in to get her brakes fixed. You can meet someone coming in to feed their family, and just being able to, you mentioned, serve them with dignity. And so in future weeks, I do want to talk about the people who are beyond the breakwater, the people that we are serving. There is a whole population name that has been coined by United Way as Alice, but we will talk about Alice in future weeks. So I think this is a good place to kind of put a pin in our discussion and pick up where we left off next time. But before we go, we would like you to kind of assess on an individual basis, or a team or business, the question that Ed posed at the beginning, which is, what is something that new that you have done for the first time in the last 6 months? Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Beyond the Breakwater, a podcast of Elevate Community Ministries. Don't let the conversation stop here. You can email us at hello@beyondthebreakwater.org. We would love to chat with you, answer questions, plan a visit, and help you take your next step. We'll see you next week.